approach business today? Because I think a lot of those that are listening have had humble beginnings, and maybe they're not letting that inform their present and future ideas and decisions. So what unique perspective has your background giving you about the way you approach business today?
Well, I think, first of all, if you do come from humble beginnings, you're the lucky one because you have a perspective of what it's like to be broke and potentially what it's like to be humble, but also hungry, wanting to make something of yourself, wanting to make a difference on the world. And I think that gives you a tremendous advantage because there are times where other people think you're working too hard, and the truth is you're just doing what you really like to do. I think there's a great sense of nobility in work. I truly believe that people's self-image comes through, their swagger comes through, their self-confidence comes through when they're working. So I've always had a high appreciation and truly a love for work. I think fundamentally having a job was always an honor for me, and I feel the same way today.
Well, talk about swagger. You bought a deli at the age of 16. Explain how that came about and then how that sort of carried you through high school and then beyond, and lessons you learned as a very young, budding entrepreneur.
Yeah, I only had one requirement when I first took the job at the deli, and that is that I could get enough hours there to more than compensate for the other 3 jobs that I would cast away, so I could make enough money to uphold what I thought to be the standard of living I got used to at that time. And in getting that job, I realized quickly that I enjoyed working with the customer. I felt that it was really a lot of fun, having 400 or 500 people come in a day and striking up a conversation with them. And when the deli was about to change hands, I had an opportunity to take the deli on for $5,500 in notes, $7,000 with interest. You pay it off in a year, it's yours. If you miss a payment at any point in time in that 12 months, you're gone. Everything's over, and it's someone else's business. So it really does kind of lay it on the line early on. But the fundamental thing I learned is the importance of focusing on that customer and realizing quickly I had big competitors on either side of me, one being Finest Supermarkets and the other being 7-Eleven. I was kind of like the little engine that could in between the two of them. And in the beginning, I made some mistakes. I put products like milk and bread as loss leaders and sold them for too low a price, and of course my competition mimicked that and actually was in a position to sell it for a lower price. So I realized that I had to compete on dimensions that were either things that my competition couldn't do or chose for whatever reason not to do. And that was really the first idea behind my strategy.
Yeah, I like that. Now, another philosophy that I like, according to your book, Winner's Dream, that was embedded in you as part of your upbringing was this quote, never let circumstances of a moment supersede the size of your dream. So talk about where this philosophy came from and how it's influenced your decisions over the years.
Yeah, my mom always believed in me, and I think everybody has to have a role model or their version of a hero that they look up to. And my mom really didn't think that there was any ceiling that was over me unless I put it over myself. And I think having that person that even when you're down and out, believes in you unconditionally, gives you the self-confidence to truly take on the world. And as I carried that forward in the delicatessen, since we're on that topic, I learned quickly that if I took better care of the customer than anybody else, they'd stay loyal to me and I could build a pretty big business. In fact, I just focused on the here and now in that era. There was a senior citizen condominium complex a block and a half away from the store, and I learned quickly that they would prefer to have things delivered to their house than to come out and shop. So we delivered. And there were blue-collar workers that really were responsible for paying my bills. Guys like my dad would come in with jeans and a T-shirt, and they'd be rich on Friday night after they got paid, and they'd be broke by Sunday morning. So we gave them credit. And then the big challenge was getting those high school kids to walk an extra block and a half past 7-Eleven in my store. And one day I was in the mall, and I noticed kids plucking all these quarters in video game rooms. And in those days, Asteroids and Pac-Man was a big thing, and quarters are what got you a few minutes with the game. And I said, wow, what if I had one of those games in the deli? And I called up a guy and asked him if he was interested in selling me one of them. And Of course, he said it was $5,000. When I said I didn't have enough money, he said, okay, $4,000. I said, I still don't have enough money, but I'd be willing to build a little section onto the store, and you could bring your game in. It'll always be your game, and you and I will split the quarters. And lo and behold, he went for that deal, and that became the honey that drew the bees when it came to the kids walking an extra block and a half. But it didn't work initially. I had to walk down there and figure out why 40 kids would be lined up outside the store with only 4 inside shopping. And one day I asked a kid, why are you all standing out here when there's only 4 in there? And they said, well, I think we're going to take stuff. I said, well, y'all don't worry about that. Come on down to the store with me, and I got some video games for you, and we'll have a good lunch, and you guys can come in 40 at a time. And I just treated the kids as if they were adults. Well, lo and behold, not too long after that, a kid said to me, when we want to have good food and play video games and be treated with respect, we come here. And when we want to steal stuff, we go to 7-Eleven. So I think it was always about focusing on that customer and trying to treat them a little extra special.
That's great. Well, speaking of respect, one of the key traits that you've demonstrated through your various jobs as well as CEO of SAP is this idea of respect to everyone, no matter what. A lot of people talk about this, Bill, but very few walk it. So tell us exactly what this means and how it shows up in your day-to-day interactions so that people can really see a model of what it is to live and to lead with this philosophy of respect.
I think a lot of us were raised that way. Our mom and dad, if you're lucky enough to have great parents like I was, or your grandparents, or if you weren't that lucky, you have somebody, a coach, a teacher, some role model in your life that kind of gave you the fundamentals of how it all works. And you basically treat people how you only wish they could treat you. And if you fundamentally believe that, you're off to a great start. And I always felt that humble and hungry were the 2 features that best defined my attitude toward things. And, I really did learn a lot by working young. When you work young, you realize if you take better care of your customer, you deliver that paper the right way, you're going to get a better tip. If you're bussing tables and you go a little out of your way for the customer, you're going to get treated a little bit differently, probably a little better tip. If you're willing to push those supermarket shopping carts around like they're fine china in the parking lot, instead of treating them like they're shopping carts, you might even get promoted and stock shelves and who knows what you could be someday. And, even when I was working for the town of Amityville, just picking up garbage and painting fences, I thought it was my fence, and I picked it up like it was my garbage. And I think that's the idea behind the whole thing. To be a leader of consequence, you have to be a person of integrity. To get treated with respect by lots of people, you have to treat everyone the same way with lots of dignity and lots of respect. And I think that that's always been my dream, to be a leader of consequence. And to be a leader of consequence, it starts with very small things.
Excellent. I love that. A leader of consequence. So now, Bill, not everything in your business journey has been smooth sailing, or let's just say that you've experienced the entrepreneur roller coaster yourself. So share a few of the challenges that you've faced and the lessons that you learned in those challenges as a result.
Well, when I wrote Winner's Dream, the one aspect of winners having a dream that really sticks with me is I truly believe that leadership is the art of developing followership. I remember the first day I went to interview for Xerox, my home that day got hit with a flood, which was pretty common. We lived on a canal in Amityville, Long Island, and our house was in a low-lying area. And therefore, every time there was a northeast storm, the house flooded. That day, it was particularly bad. We had about 4.5 feet of water in the house, and it was 1,100 square foot, 2-story house. And my brother carried me from step 5 as I was coming down the stairs in my $99 suit from the mall to the front street where my dad was going to drive me to the Long Island Railroad. So I think right from the beginning, I saw adversity, and I had to stare that down and get in that car, make that trip to Long Island Railroad. And as I was getting out of the car, I said to my dad, I guarantee you I'm coming home with my employee badge in my pocket tonight from Xerox Corporation. I was 21 years old. And my dad said, Bill, you're a good guy. Don't worry about that. Just do your best. I said, I guarantee it. And I get on the railroad that day, and I'm reading the Xerox annual report, and there was a guy by the name of David Kearns who was reinventing Xerox on a principle called total quality management in the early 80s. And when I was in the train thinking about that interview, I literally got inspired by David Kearns. So by the time I got to 666 Fifth Avenue and to the hiring center for that interview, I already had a point of view about who I was in regard to that interview and what my dream was at Xerox. It was to be David Kearns someday. Of course, that was a little audacious for a guy that was just trying to get a sales job knocking on cold doors, but you got to have the dream, and you got to have the winner's attitude. I knew exactly why I was there that day. I was there to get my dream job. And I wasn't going in for an interview to get a job. I felt like I was in a fight for my life. And by the time I got to my last, I believe it was my 8th interview that day, I was in 9 West 57th in Manhattan, the Avon building on the 38th floor overlooking Central Park, talking to Emerson Fullwood, who was then the district manager of Xerox. I figured I must have done good to get to him in the first place. But after the interview, it was a great interview, he said, Bill, this is a good talk, and the HR department is going to get in touch with you in the next 2 weeks. And I said, Mr. Fullwood, I'm not sure you completely understand the situation, sir. And as I said that, he kind of tilted his head looking at me as if to say, what's up, And I said, well, I promised my dad that I was coming home with my employee badge in my pocket, and I haven't broken a promise to him in 21 years, and I can't start now. He tilts his head again, this time for a little longer pause, smiles, and says, Bill McDermott, if you haven't committed any crimes, you're hired with the Xerox Corporation. What's amazing is, in the face of adversity, the start of that day and what you thought was going to be really rough competition, if you want it more, you can absolutely change people's minds, and the underdog can win. At the end of that, I went down 38 floors, took off to 57th and 6th, got into Bunnenberger. In those days, you had payphones with quarters. I called up my mom and dad, and I said, break out the core bell. We're celebrating. I got the job. So adversity hits you at different points in different ways. I have many other stories if you'd like me to continue.
Well, I love what you're saying there about the adversity you've gone through and the fact that you were intimidated, because people see you today, Bill, the CEO of a massive global organization, leading 60,000 plus employees and 2 million people in your ecosystem. And oftentimes people view leaders like yourself as invincible. So to prove that you're human, just like the rest of us, share a few of your biggest fears or faults and how you've worked to overcome them.
Well, one of the dreams I had at Xerox was to be the CEO of Xerox, and after a 17-year career driving, performing, and running great businesses, I decided to leave Xerox. And I talk a little bit about the personal thunderbolts that can hit you. And, of course, shortly after leaving Xerox, I was confronted with a situation where my wife had cancer, and I had 2 little kids, and I was with a new company as the new president. And you want to talk about fear. Nothing can shake you up more than the thought of having your whole world come crumbling down in one move. And when you feel like the worst guy in the world because you took the promotion, yeah, it was a good move for your career, but you did it in the midst of personal chaos. It can be pretty terrifying. I was quite shaken up. My wife had cancer, was going in for surgery. I'm at Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. And I took out my Visa card like any good husband would, and I got the private room, and I essentially moved in for the duration of this battle. And when my wife was in surgery, there was a wonderful gentleman, a priest, that came up to me with snow white hair and beautiful blue Paul Newman eyes and essentially said, what are you here for? And I explained the situation with my wife, and I told him, and he listened thoughtfully. And I said, Father, what are you here for? And he said, well, I'm associated with the New York Fire Department, and I'm visiting one of my colleagues who's not doing too well, and, say a prayer for him. I said, I will. And he said, I'm going to say a prayer for your wife. And lo and behold, I go into the recovery room when my wife comes out of surgery, and one of the nurses in intensive care said to me, there's a priest here to see you. And I said, whoa, is there something you're not telling me? And she said, no. He said he's a friend of yours. I said, okay, send him in. So it was him. He comes over to my wife's side, puts his face very close to hers, the cross on her bed, and says an impassioned prayer. Her eyes wake up to his. He asked me to go out in the hallway with him so we could talk. I do. And I said, Father, how's it going? And he said, Bill, your wife is going to be fine. And I said, how do you know? And he said, I have friends in high places. And I said, I'll take it. No question. I take you at your word. That's fantastic. And thank you. And didn't really spend another moment on that because he had to leave. But then about 3 nights later, he comes back to the hospital late at night on a Sunday. And after everyone was gone, and spent quite a bit of time with my wife and I, and visited with us very thoughtfully. And at the end, he just said, Bill and my wife, Julie, take care. It's been great getting to know you. I said, Father, if there's anything I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. And he said, well, I see a beautiful woman like your wife struggling with this battle. Makes me want to have a drink more than ever, and I have a little bit of a problem with that, so say a prayer for me. I said, Father, you got it. And I definitely will. Well, the next thing I know, of course, subsequently, thank goodness, my wife recovered fully, and everything is fine at home. And it was 9/11. I turned on the television set in California at the request of some of my friends back east. And, of course, Father Michael Judge was the first reported casualty at 9/11. And it was Father Michael Judge that was with me and my wife at Sloan Kettering on that day.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Wow. So, Bill, I'm curious, now in the position that you're in, having taken this long journey from the corner store to the corner office, if you were to go back and give advice to that 16-year-old, what are 2 or 3 things that you wish he knew back then that you know now that would even accelerate the success path that you've had, you think?
I think the young generation, first of all, has something that we didn't have then, which is an extraordinary focus on purpose. I tried to always have a purpose to the things that I did and a purpose in my life, but I believe that this generation has a natural advantage in the sense that they really do sift through work that matters and dreams that matter better than we did then, because they want to do things that achieve a purpose in the world. They really want to make a difference. And I would simply double down on do things with your time and your life that truly inspire your soul so you act as a person with purpose and ultimately excel to be a leader of consequence. And leaders of consequence are dreamers, but they're also winners. So I would, if I was that 16-year-old today, I would still be that dreamer that was focused on doing what it took to win, but always tie it together with a greater purpose. I would really go for that. That would be my number one thing. The thing I would absolutely keep is the recognition that hard work, ultimate determination, and perseverance really does pay off, but it's not just the sweat equity that comes from it. It's the fact that later on in life, you are a sum total of all the experiences, the good ones and the bad ones, the things that hurt and also the things that made you super happy. But the person you are when you are 53 is so interesting and so much more interesting than the person at 16 because of the journey that you've been on. So in the end, I would remind everyone that the journey is your reward, and it will ultimately be the thing you're most grateful for.
Well, speaking of that next generation, as we round out our chat today, Bill, leave us with some parting wisdom. If you were talking to those grandchildren that you will certainly have and giving them advice about how to face their fears and conquer their dreams and live a life of significance, do the things that inspire their soul, and be a leader or man or woman of consequence, what else would you tell them when it comes to facing down those fears and conquering their dreams and instilling the winner's dream inside their heart and mind and passion?
Well, first of all, be a person in service to other people. If you can take the pressure off of yourself and what's in it for you and what you want to extract from this world, and simply get a headset that is all based upon what you can give to this world and what you can do to help other people, it kind of releases all that self-inflicted pressure that people walk around with each and every day, because you become a person that understands the true measure of a human is not what they take from this world, but it's what they give back to this world. And in that spirit, I think you can stare down any demon. The other piece is, don't be so hard on yourself. There are really great things about you. Everyone has their sweet blemish of innocence. Everyone has that unique sense of magic. Everyone has that DNA strain that's unique to them. And I constantly remind people to focus on the things that you're really good at and be proud of that. And start to work on those rough edges kind of in the background, but don't let that supersede the strengths, because that ultimately will be the differentiator that makes you a happy, a successful, and a complete person. Of course, we're never done fixing up the things that are wrong about us, because nobody's perfect. But I would say you're more perfect than you think. And be proud of what you are, where you come from, and carry it with you like a badge of honor. And with that attitude that you can be a winner and you can achieve your dreams if only you commit yourself to them, I think winners can dream, I think winners should dream, and I think winners will dream and they will win. And I absolutely believe you have to place the dream first.